We have our own forward-looking financial disclosure statements too, but that's already been covered by Swati at the beginning of this. So what about Hevo? What makes us unique in the world? We're really positioned quite well for the future of autonomous vehicles. We're best in class. We've already won multiple classification, certification. We'd also add into that awards as well. So we're the only company in the world that we know of that has a dual certification for both the UL requirements, which is technically what is typically going to be the certifying agency for anything that's connected to the grid, especially anything that's high power. So any existing EV charging or EV related infrastructure is typically going to have something like a UL certification. The specific UL certification for wireless charging is known as UL 2750. Secondly, the automotive specification for universal wireless charging is known as Society of Automotive Engineers, or SAE, and the specific certification or qualification for that is J2954. So we became the first in the world to achieve both of those, and we did that back in 2020, and since then have been highly focused on our beachhead customers, which is the automotive space, specifically major automakers such as Stellantis and others. We did receive something that is really important in the credence of, we'd say, automotive speak. The PACE Pilot Award being that is a technology that's on the rise or something to watch for. Is something that's quite hard to get. It is an award that is voted on by a consortium of major automakers, tier ones, and reporters on what technologies matter the most to the future of automotive, and we were thankfully selected as one of those. We have over 17 patents now issued and counting in terms of patent families, and we're continuing to broaden that out, but it does reach deeply and broadly across the entire spectrum of wireless charging for the company. So anything hardware, software, back-end design, or otherwise related to the methodology of how we deploy wireless charging, that is all within this patent scope. And then finally, the thing that is the killer of all killers for all EV charging, the killer app, if you will, but in this case, we're a hardware and software technology company, is something that's known as polyphase technology. And it gives us the ability to charge up to 8 times the amount of power within the same space of any other competitor system. So imagine this. Imagine that if you pull over a pad that's approximately 1 yard by 1 yard that's on the ground, you would have to have up to 8 or more of those same pads to achieve the same amount of power that you can get from the Hevo system. And that technology was co-developed with one of the national labs here in the US, a national laboratory known as Oak Ridge National Labs. And they're headquartered down in Tennessee, but we were funded by the Department of Energy to develop this new technology known as polyphase tech. So we are continuing that process as we speak. The problem with today in EV charging is that it copies this model of gas stations, which is that you pull up to a location and then you got to wait in line and then you have to stop and charge for quite some time. It's really a mistake. This should not be the way that we're charging electric cars. It should be that you're topping up consistently and everywhere, meaning that it's really easy to have the accessibility and ubiquity that you need for wireless charging, because you don't have cords and cables and all these different interoperability problems that you get with the current charging model today. So our model is to make it so ubiquitous and so accessible that you don't have to think about where you're going, and it changes the entire concept, if you will. It is the breakthrough that is required to make electric vehicles more adoptive ready. And so with wireless charging, it can be everywhere that there's electricity. So by 2030, it's expected that over 40% of global sales for all cars are going to be electric, and 70% of all autonomous ride-hailing fleets are electric. So everything is going towards this idea of autonomy and electric vehicles, but we need to be prepared for this. So creating this ubiquitous EV charging infrastructure is what is critical to the adoption of autonomous electric vehicles and just EVs in general. Now, I'll also say there's just a lot of noise right now out there about autonomous vehicles, but it is real. I can tell you, I can attest to the fact that I've taken dozens of autonomous rides where Waymo and other options are available. Anybody that has typically will see the price be better than their normal Uber or their Lyft. And it just drives like a perfect driver. So it's really strange that something that can drive itself has to go 20, 30, 45 minutes plus off its normal routes of customer pickup and drop off to go be charged by a person plugging it in. I don't think anybody in the world would think that makes any sense. So wireless charging is inevitable, as we've already heard from Swati as a result. So we developed this wireless charging platform. No cables, no plugs, no hassle. It's purely wireless charging. It's effortless. It comes from the ground, if you will. It's connected, of course, to the grid. So it must be, connected to something that has a power source. But the vehicle has a wireless pad on it. So think of it like this. It's a souped up version of wireless charging for your phone, except much, much more powerful and much, much more efficient. And so the other side of that is it unleashes your vehicle from being tied in to only having to charge in a static location. You can actually charge and drive at the same time, which is where it eventually will go. But we need to take steps to achieving that initially, which is to start with static. So what is it and how does it work? Well, you pick a location, you align your car, and that can be done by you as a human driver, or it can be done by the autonomous system, which we are starting to see more and more of. And then it just starts charging. It's really that simple. There's nothing more to that. We are currently working on autonomous integrations right now. In fact, at our facility here in Brooklyn, New York, where we're headquartered, there is an autonomous car here that is being integrated with our wireless charging system to be the first demonstration vehicle of its kind that we know of in the world that does both autonomy and wireless charging. And we're preparing to unveil that in a public location in Detroit at the end of September. So we got a lot of work that's going on right now, and it is an exciting time to be a part of this. And I would also tell you that there's still a lot of work to go, but nonetheless, we are creating the future. And so it goes very simply like this: locate the charger that you want to go to, or the vehicle can select for that on their own if it's an autonomous car. The vehicle aligned, start charging complete. All this is also done through a mobile app that gives you all the clear details about what's going on, including being prepared for wireless charging so that you can do the parking alignment. It has a really cool user interface where you can see the vehicle pulling up at real-time speed and actually align it on your own. We did gamify it, so it's fun. It's got this nice interaction with it. Then on top of that, there's this remote operability where you can always turn it on and turn it off whenever you want to. By the way, our wireless charging is bidirectional. That means if there's a blackout in your area, your vehicle works like a power wall to charge your home. So there's all these tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of electric cars today that do not have bidirectionality. And that is an absolute mistake, because every single one of those vehicles is ultimately a backup generator that could be powering people's homes in moments of blackouts. And that could help to stabilize the grid whenever there's a high consumption rate, especially during the summertime when there's ACs on and all those kinds of matters. We're here in New York. We had multiple blackouts this year because it got up into triple digits and everybody had their ACs on, and then everybody's ACs went off. I could tell you, as a person who does not want to be in that kind of heat, I would have loved to have an electric car that could bidirectionally have powered my apartment. That'd have been wonderful. So at the final end of this is this account management piece. Of course, you get a bill that's all wireless to your phone. Accounting, all that is done there in one simple location. So our hardware, a lot of the questions that often come up, well, people do assimilate wireless charging for cars the same way that they do for wireless charging for phones. And, the obvious answer that people kind of try to come to is that, well, wireless charging for phones is really inefficient and it's just slower. And the answer for wireless charging for electric cars, it's anything but that. So there's just a different type of technology that's used. It's called resonance. And so with electromagnetic resonance, you can achieve much higher efficiencies and you can achieve much higher power levels without having to sacrifice on cost, especially when you are using Hevo. And so what I can tell you is this: from the grid or from the outlet or wherever the power source is, all the way to the battery on the vehicle, when you take in all the loss and all the conversions, we're somewhere around a 93+% peak efficiency, which puts us right on par with plug-in charging. Then, on top of that, our systems are bidirectional so that the vehicle can charge back into the grid. And so, therefore, it could power your home. And then, to add to all that, it's a smart device and a smart system that you can reserve and make decisions with when you want to charge. And it can work with autonomous vehicle technology as well, so that it can charge on its own. And we're able to do all this within a very, very small price. When we look at the vehicle assemblies, depending on the power level, at 11 kilowatt, the vehicle side only equipment ranges from $250 at 11 kilowatt to 350 kilowatts being at $750. So you can practically 30x your power level for only 3x the cost. This is what makes us so unique in the world, is that we have made wireless charging both efficient, but also with the performance that is necessary to make it very easy to adopt. For the charging station side of the equipment, for a home 11 kilowatt bidirectional system, which means that's an overnight charger. That's what you would typically have at a home anyway. But charge your home in a few hours, or charge your car in a few hours. That system will run around $1,200. For a system that can supercharge your vehicle, say in the 100+ kilowatt range, still those chargers are only a little over $6,000. And when you compare that in apples to oranges, if you will, between wireless to plug-in charging, we see something in the range of a difference that wireless charging beats plug-in charging in cost. So as an 11 kilowatt bidirectional system at $1,200, an 11 kilowatt bidirectional system for plug-in charging usually doesn't go for below $3,000. That's right. And for plug-in charging at 350 kilowatts that could charge your vehicle in minutes, a wireless charging system from Hevo is $6,200 or $6,200 versus what you would typically pay $50,000 to $150,000 for a plug-in charging system. So somewhere in the nature of 10 to 30x cheaper than the conventional plug-in charging system that had the same speed. So I'm here to tell you, subsidies do not matter to Hevo. We're very happy they're gone. We never went about it to try to do business that way. Our business was always to match the price with the performance that people would want to have. And we think we've achieved that and then some by making it the best price solution, period. So customers get it. It's very intuitive. It's all about cost. It's always about ease of use, always about ease of use. There's aesthetics. You know, the beauty of having a pad that's either placed on the ground in your garage, flush mounted in your garage, flush mounted at the curbside or in another parking garage, or even buried underneath the asphalt. All those are applications that our system allows for. And so there's this whole aesthetics that comes with wireless charging that's just much more beautiful and much more elegant than a big pedestal system that looks like a knockoff gas station, frankly. Who wants that? That doesn't make any sense. And it's future ready for autonomy, not to mention all the other safety considerations, not all these cords or cables or things that you have to plug in when it's raining outside, stepping in puddles of water, or all the vandalism problems that have been happening with the EV charging stations. There's just a lot to gain out of this. So Hevo is 90% cheaper than any of our other wireless charging competitors. And we know that because we have validated that even recently. I've had calls with CEOs of our wireless charging competitors. There's not that many. And many of them are kind of in bad shape, to be honest, because they're so expensive and their technology doesn't meet the requirements. And we're so much cheaper. And so by the facts are, our vehicle systems that run for $250 to $750, one of our competitors are selling the same level of power systems for $30,000 on the vehicle side. It's as much as the car. And then the grid side is $100,000. It's as much as a fast charger for plug-in charging. It doesn't make any sense. So when we look at this again across the board, Hevo beats both wireless and plug-in charging, period. We are the best price, best qualified, best performing technology. No other answers to that, just straight across the board. Again, I just would tell you, by all means, take a look at this presentation. You can pull that off of our landing page. So these are the only other real competitors in the space. There are some other ones that are licensees of some of these companies too. I would just say upfront that the two dominant companies in this space is Hevo and Tesla. Tesla acquired in 2023 one of our wireless charging competitors out of Germany for a reported $76 million. And I would just also point out that they have already announced that they will have wireless charging on their upcoming vehicles, especially the ones that are fully autonomous, which was announced in the October 2024 event that was known as We Robot. And so the difference between Hevo and Tesla in this case is Tesla is very much going to develop this technology specifically for their vehicles as a vertical technology stack. So consider them the Apple, if you will, of wireless charging. Hevo is the Android. And we are an open source system that is universally compatible that we want everybody else in the world to use. And so if you look at it from a market comparison, Apple owns about 13% of total market share. Android owns about 87%. We want to be Android. Everybody else, they fall below the line of either being niche or not being universal or being too expensive. And therefore, we don't really see them being competitors against Hevo going forward on a real basis. Our business model. We want to capture the automakers, in which is what we're actually doing today. Capture automakers with our innovative hardware that's priced to what their sensitivity is already. Then we expand our automaker customer base through the low rate production that we offer. We start to license our Journey software out to these automakers, but also we include charging options for subscriptions for charging host. And so people that buy our hardware that are using it for third-party uses to try to sell energy or other models to customers that need to charge their vehicles, they also need to have our software to run that. As we start to enable that model and we start to see a mass concentration effect of people coming into wireless charging, we then continue to rapidly reduce our hardware pricing, therefore inducing more customers to adopt, especially the major automakers. And then that allows for us to consolidate the competition, not just consolidation of the other wireless charging competitors, which we've already started those discussions, but even more importantly, the existing plug-in charging companies, which most of them are failing right now because they have hardware that is too expensive to both produce and also to maintain. So this is an opportunity to basically do an immediate switch where one day you wake up and there's no more plug-in charging, it's just wireless charging, and it's already been refitted to all these public charging locations where these dilapidated and really destroyed locations of plug-in charging no longer need to have plug-in charging yet. Now they have wireless. We then start to introduce subscription plans as a model to our users so that drivers don't have to pay and go anymore. They can use it as a telecom model where just like, a T-Mobile or an AT&T, you pay a monthly price to have, we'll say, unlimited charging anywhere that Hevo is available. And then finally, this allows for us to get to the point where we can start to introduce driving and charging at the same time down the road, which would be known as dynamic charging. You've already met some members of our team, but we come from a background of automotive for the most part. And so as for me, I'm a veteran. I served in the Army. I led troops into combat into Baghdad. I came back and did my degree at Columbia University with a focus on urban policy and also on sustainability. This was predominantly my specific research. And I launched the company in my final semester at Columbia and have continued to steward the company ever since. Meanwhile, we have great board members and board advisor members, also hailing from Legacy Automotive in Detroit and also Innovative Automotive out on the West Coast. A couple of things on traction. We've currently raised almost $19 million to date. We have had some great institutional investors such as Ulu Ventures, Volo Earth, and the Dream Fund, which was funded by Jeff Bezos. And so we've had many more than that too, thankfully. But really the high concentration of our investors have come from retail investors through Reg CF and Reg D, which we have done on platforms such as WeFunder and also on Republic. We just last week closed our most recent Reg CF platform, which was WeFunder, with almost $1 million raised on it in just about 6 weeks. So we obviously clearly have struck a chord with the retail investor in a very meaningful way. We actually have over 4,000 retail investors to date. And of course, those are not single line items on our cap table as shareholders. They're all packed into SPVs and custodianship as a result. And we have major automakers. So we do have a collaboration with Stellantis, which is the largest, or I should say the fourth largest automaker in the world. The brands with Stellantis include Jeep, Chrysler, Fiat, Peugeot. So you would recognize the majority of the names underneath their brand. There's 13 automotive brands within the Stellantis group. And so right before this, actually, we had a call with their team. We're preparing for some important news coming up in 2026 with them. But we'll say there's some targets for production coming up towards the end of the decade with them. We just also announced that we have a partnership with a company called SteerTech. That is an autonomous technology company that is specifically providing their autonomous technology for fleet yards. So imagine it like this. You drive up with your commercial van or your truck, you drop it off at the front gate. From there, the vehicle pulls itself in and moves around in the fleet yard on its own, parks over our wireless charging system, and begins to charge on its own without anybody else needing to be there for human intervention. And then it can go to the bay and get packed up. So their technology already does that. They've already tested it with one of the largest last mile delivery companies in the world. And the news is between their autonomous system and our wireless charging system, these fleets believe that they could save 6 figures in operational cost per vehicle per year by having their software, hardware, autonomous technology with our wireless charging stack as a complementary technology together. This is a huge deal because that would basically, just in the savings alone, create an ROI in effectively 1 year or less, potentially, for a lot of these major fleets by switching over to electric for their last mile delivery vehicles, the commercial vans and those trucks. We have multiple automaker programs. This is all a bottom-up model. All right. So what I mean by that is that these are numbers that have been provided to us by the automakers directly. And we do know between 2027 to 2029, multiple automakers will be launching with our wireless charging systems as their already selected reference design technology. I'll repeat that, as their already selected reference design technology for their upcoming EV models. So right now we're being planned into up to 7 new electric vehicle models for release between 2027 to 2029. As we see it on a per annual basis, just with the automakers that have currently already signaled that, we're looking at 100 million plus in revenue per year starting around 2028. And so we're automatically profitable by year 1 of production. That makes us, yes, we are a pre-revenue company, but we do have existing agreements in place. We are working towards the production agreements to be settled in 2026, which is why we're really raising part of this reason for raising the 5 million is dedicated to getting those production agreements in place. But we do already have early agreements with these automakers in place. So we are actively doing our Series A2. This is a preferred round. It is 60 million pre with a target of 5 million. We've already brought in almost $1 million to it. So we have about 4.1 million still left on the table. We are preparing to close this round by the end of this year. We want to try to close this by November 1st or earlier, actually. I would also tell you that the key reasons for raising this 5 million is the advancement of our runway for 18 plus more months to complete our remaining developments with these major automakers that we're currently working with, and to advance with 1 to 3 more automakers as well, which we are already engaged with, and for production to start approximately around 2028. So we're securing the production agreements, advancing our technology, growing the Hevo journey software, and then scaling for the infrastructure side. Our plan, and I'm going to be wrapping this up in just a minute, our plan is to be the go-to solution for EV charging by 2030, period. Meaning that anybody going forward that wants to have wireless charging or just EV charging as a general rule of thumb, we believe wireless charging will become the prevailing method, and Hevo will be the Android, as I've stated, of this market. We will be working on controlling market share and being in the top right quadrant of this. But we do see a pathway here to exit. And we think the exit plan is right now, and I say this, it's a target. This is not a guarantee, but our prerogative is to seek out an IPO by the end of this decade. What really is important to this is that we will do it traditionally. This is not going to be a SPAC or some kind of reverse merger nonsense. And this will be done on the heels of being profitable. If you look across the board, SAP or S&P, I should say, uh, these EV charging companies are not doing very well. And most of them are actually penny stocks or they've gone out of business. So here's the deal. We need to be profitable, which is why we're working directly with the automakers, because it guarantees volumes with margin already. So as that is stated, once we start producing and we show profitability, we're on about an 18-month countdown in our view to targeting that IPO. Okay. All righty. I think we're here. Happy to take questions.
Jeremy, so first off, everyone, please know that you can submit your questions. I'll moderate them, and Jeremy is here to answer them. Jeremy, one thing I know that you're planning is another fundraise next year, right? I think that's important in the financing side of things to let people know that they can have an exit as soon as you do that. So if you just want to expand on that.
Absolutely. If you give me just a second, I'll help even expand on it a little bit more. So here's what we have planned for future fundraising. We know retail investors love us, and we love them too. So I don't want to misrepresent that. We do love the institutionals, and we want to make sure we bring them in. And we do have strategic automakers and other partners who are also considering multi-million-dollar investments in the organization. And so there's a lot that's on the table at the moment, but I will just point this part out. We do see that the company is heading towards something that looks like this. I'm going to bring this up in one sec. Okay. Should be able to see my screen. Tell me if you can. Are we good to go?
Yes.
I can't. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. So here's the basic financials. We're in a NRE or non-recurring engineering, if you will, revenue kind of business for the next 2 years or so. And that's what these major automakers, these are the developments that are being done to prepare the technology to be a production series system on their upcoming wireless charging platform ready vehicles. Okay, so at the end of the day, again, we're targeting, and this is a bottom up, this is based on volumes that have been shared with us type of model. So when we look at the hardware, really what we're seeing is that this is what the automakers have requested. And when we look at what is the needs of the company to raise capital, we're going to raise about 5 million and some change this year. Next year, 10 million. The following year, 15 million. We'll continue to open it up. And so what Swati is getting to is, what is the company's prerogative in trying to make sure that we give options for exit? And the company's leaning into a Reg A Plus to launch at the beginning of 2026. And we can run that for 12 months and raise up to $75 million on a Reg A Plus. But the other thing about Reg A Plus is it affords the company the ability to use up to, and again, this is at the company's discretion, up to 30% of its proceeds from that raise in the form of secondary sales. So that means that you would have potentially a pathway to exiting out earlier if you don't want to run the whole run with us to the IPO or whatever other form of exit that we plan for. But the other point of that is that every single year, at the beginning of the year, it is now being planned that we start the Reg A Plus, we'll say approximately in January of every year, close it out in December of every single year, and then we reopen it with a new price and with a new plan for how much funds we're going to raise for that year. And within that Reg A Plus, we will see participation from the strategic investors and the institutional investors, because it will be priced. It's not going to be a safe, it's not going to be a convertible note. It's going to be a priced preferred round, just like we're doing with the Series A2. So technically, what we're talking about here is basically the Series B launches vis-a-vis Reg A Plus in 2026, targeting that to open up at the beginning of the year. We close that by the end of 26, and opening up the Series C, if you will, or maybe we can call it the Series B2 for 2027, and we continue to do that until we get to IPO. But I want to just make sure that everybody, when they see this debt financing, don't get spooked by that, because the majority of that will, first, tooling cost gets covered by the automaker. So that's millions of dollars for each automaker that gets covered by them. That's their typical responsibility. Number two, the rest of this is really built into the per cost per vehicle parts and assembly works and all that. And since we are working to have that contract manufactured out, and we're working with several major CEMs as either directly being the final assembler with in-the-line testing and shipping, or potentially Hevo being the in-the-line testing and shipping for that side. No matter what that case is, that's all baked into the price per good. So do not look at this debt financing as, my gosh, this company's going to go get $500 million in debt financing. No, no, no. All of that is baked into the automaker buying the tooling and into their per piece price, because that is our parts that are already built into that, which is typically leveraged through 30, net 60 kinds of payback details as well in those contracts. Okay, so I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Jeremy. So everyone, please note there's a question mark at the bottom of your screen. You can submit your questions there. I have a few. I'm going to start out with a few questions that I already have. And thank you everyone for sending your questions. We've received a bunch of questions. So we are definitely going to meet the top of the hour here. If not, go from there. All right. Okay, so there's some questions coming in right here about Tesla. Has Tesla announced their plan for wireless charging, and what is their timing?
Yes, so Elon officially announced it in October of 2024 at the We Robot event, where they unveiled the Cybercab. And so it is going to be the only way to charge a Cybercab as they announced it. There won't be any charging infrastructure that will be plug-in charging specifically for that. So that helps them to decontent the vehicle. And that's really important. That's why the vehicle will be produced and priced under $30,000 because of wireless charging. They don't have to have all the pedal equipment. They don't have to have the steering equipment. And here's the other thing. As wireless charging prevails and becomes more ubiquitous and accessible, of course, it's not available today, but it's going to be in the next 2 years, then the vehicles can always top up. And if they can always top up, they don't need to have as big of a battery pack, which is the most costly and the most highly weighted product that's on those vehicles. So there's an opportunity here to streamline the wireless charging type of user experience with wireless charging, which leads to always being able to top up, which leads to decontenting the vehicle and bringing the cost down anywhere from between 20 to 50%, because you don't need all this extra equipment on it to do these things that you need humans to do. Okay, so the answer to the second question is, what is the timing? It just depends on when they're going to launch the Cybercab. So they were saying in 2026 for that. Perhaps that's going to be, you know how it goes with Tesla. So that could mean 27, that could mean 28. But nonetheless, we would assume that they're going to launch it sometime in the next couple of years. And I see this, what pilot says, Hevo done with customers to demonstrate wireless charging in the field, et cetera. For instance, our fleets using Hevo and charging now. We've done pilots with companies like Stellantis, with Toyota, with some of the largest utility companies in the world, and it continues to grow. And I would tell you that additionally to that, we have done it with some fleets. And we would just say that one of our key customers, our major automaker customers, the first customer group that they're targeting to try to get this into the hands of their first customer group is fleets. And so as an example, and this has nothing to do with what I'm proclaiming here, but as an example, Stellantis has 100,000 vehicles on order with Amazon for their electric commercial van. Well, that's a perfect platform for wireless charging to go on, especially when Amazon wants to try its best to eliminate any inefficiencies to its cost on how they operate these systems. Today, Amazon does something that is the way that most big commercial fleets do this as well, which is that they have multiple drivers per each vehicle, one driver just to go deliver the parcels, that go deliver the packages, and another driver who drives the vehicle around inside the fleet yard. Well, if the vehicle is autonomous and wirelessly equipped, they don't have to have that extra driver in the fleet yard. And that's where they see the potential 6 figures plus per year savings per vehicle. So anyways, yes, we've done many pilots starting back in 2014. We've done 10 years worth of pilots with major automakers, major fleets, and also with major energy companies. And so right now, the next stage of this is preparing our product to go on to these vehicles as a production series system, so that the fleets and the retail consumer customers can just buy the vehicles with wireless charging already on it. Aftermarket is not a real market, by the way.
Jeremy, just to press on that, has this been in the actual field? Like when you say you've done a pilot, what has been the scope and size of that pilot? Has it been just in the practice driving area, or has it been for real, like with customers?
No, it's been for real. So certainly there's development work and there's test work, but we've also had plenty of field programs as well. And they're not large. I don't want to act like they are. And they're typically in private fleets, so we can't just announce who they are. But they're out in the actual fleet yard or in the parking lot getting abused by the rain, by all the different incremental weather requirements, flooding, all these things that it has to go through. I want to repeat back to one of the original parts of the presentation. Hevo is the only UL and SAE qualified technology in the world. To be UL certified is a very big deal for wireless charging, because nobody else has really achieved it other than us and one other company that's no longer in business. And so to point that out, you have to meet drive over requirements, you got to meet burn requirements, you got to meet sun UV requirements, flooding requirements. It's a significant amount of detail required to meet that certification. So our technology is rated for both indoor, outdoor use, public use. It doesn't matter. It can go anywhere and everywhere.
There's another question. What has allowed Hevo to utilize electromagnetic resonance technology versus competition, and or allowed outdistancing competition using EMR? I think everyone is using EMR, isn't it?
Yeah, more or less. So this is electromagnetic resonance. It's a universal standard for 85 kilohertz to be the dominating frequency that wireless charging is using. So that's our own independent frequency for the industry. And so electromagnetic resonance is something that we have also ourselves patented. It's in our patents. But at the end of the day, every single developer, which again, there's not that many left, there's only a couple of us. Every single developer has come up with their own methodology to that solution. So we need to make sure that there's interoperability between the systems, which is what the SAE standard is for. Minus that, it's our own version of what electromagnetic resonance is, plus different technologies that we've advanced to ensure that we can keep the cost comparatively, if not better than plug-in charging.
So, but to come back to the question, what has allowed you to outdistance competition in this area? What makes Hevo so special? I know that Vitricity, for example, has raised gobs of money, but if you could share what has allowed you to outdistance them.
Yeah, so there's something known as polyphase technology. One thing is that most of those companies were predominantly focused on something that was really only meant to be for pilots. They were doing science experiments and lab tests and that kind of prototyping. We've always been focused on actually commercializing the technology. And by doing so, that means we've always had automakers in our focus. And so if you're going to deal with automakers, you got to deal with what they require, which is you got to be within the size, weight, performance, and cost parameters that have to be designed in. And so that means it has to be fully optimized and aligned with what the automaker is doing. As far as we know, none of these other wireless charging companies have any automaker customers. And because of that, they're way outside of the boundaries of what is known as size, weight, performance, cost, or swap C. But it always works in the reverse side of that. It's always, when you talk with automakers, it's always cost, performance, weight, and size. So the key technology that has really supported our ability to first advance through the cost, because the first thing that comes up in any conversation with an automaker, how much does it cost? It doesn't matter what it does. And by the way, they're not on board with the environmentalism and all that other stuff. That doesn't matter to them. They have to sell cars. And so if they're going to sell cars with some other piece of equipment on it, they're adding cost to the vehicle one way or another until they make a decision not to have wireless charge or plug-in charging and only have wireless charging. And at that point, they can start to radically reduce the cost on the vehicle. So this polyphase technology that I discussed earlier in the presentation is really the cornerstone of how we have made this happen. It's a technology that we developed with Oak Ridge National Labs, and it basically is multiple coils in one package versus just having one coil in one package. And by doing that, it eliminates all these extra cost, weight, and thermal requirements to manage very high power or even low power requirements. But it also retains the size. So we can keep in the same size package for 11 kilowatt to 50 kilowatt. We can stay in the same size package for 50 kilowatt to 100 plus kilowatt without having to go through this whole repackaging and get to a point where the costs no longer are within the attainable requirements. So it's really built around three primary things: polyphase technology, drastic improvements to our power engineering, electric engineering designs for our power electronics that have packaged our power electronics into, as far as we know, the smallest package for that power level, period. And then the other part of this is that it is very much market ready for these kinds of major automakers based upon their requirements.
Jeremy, thank you, Jeremy. In your view, what is likely to be the future is that we are likely to have wireless charging backed up by a wired system, in which case, I mean, I feel like that's probably going to happen, in which case, what is the additional weight that will go on? Well, it sounds like the wired will always be there, and then even if only as a backup, but there is an additional weight which will go on, which will come from your system. So what is the amount of additional weight that your system brings in?
I mean, I would just point out, are you connected into and communicating to me via Wi-Fi? Or are you communicating to me through an Ethernet or a dial-up connection right now?
No, the default standard is Wi-Fi, but
and then cellular.
There is a backup.
And then cellular, and then satellite, and then Ethernet. You know, my whole point of this is there will always need to be redundancy to a small niche portion potentially of vehicles, and that would be more like heavy duty port locations where you can't potentially have any kind of disturbances. And you know, the wrong way to think of this is like, well, things can happen in wireless charging that makes it not feasible to have it as the only standalone. That's not true. It's like if I were going to tell you that cellular and Wi-Fi doesn't work. It's not. And yes, there are different types of technologies. I understand that. People are probably going, well, how's wireless charging the same as Wi-Fi? The point is that it is the Wi-Fi effect for mobility. If you have Wi-Fi available for your phone, do you really want to have to go back and cord that in? No, of course not. So there's going to be a level of redundancy that will be there for only a small niche. The majority of vehicles eventually over the next 5 to 10 years only will be wireless. And because it's going to be a cost situation. It's the cheapest way to do business. And it's also the best. Now, to answer to your question, we see wireless charging becoming more and more the standard by around 2030. And that's what we're hearing from automakers, because that's basically when we're seeing like more than 10 plus vehicles being planned for wireless charging already. And so over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, we'll have the first ones released. But I'd be the first to admit that I also don't want to live in a world of cords and plugging in my vehicle, because I've had to do that for 10 plus years. And there's nothing worse than getting out of your vehicle when it's raining and it's cold outside and getting rained on while you're plugging something high voltage into your car. That's not really fun.
Yeah, but the thing is that the majority of things are still wired. I mean, my laptop, my screen monitor, for example, is still running on wired power. It is power.
Sure.
But anyhow, these vehicles that you're working with, are they planning to have a backup wired power or no?
Yeah,
In the
initially, but it converts out. Eventually, like if the numbers clearly, if the data shows that most customers desire wireless charging and they don't want to have plug-in charging, then that's one thing. And I want to point this out again. Most of these plug-in charging companies are really in trouble. And again, you just have to go to the S&P and take a look at how they're performing at this moment. Most of them have come into the penny stock region and may be delisted because they're not able to manufacture product at a price point and maintain it at a price point that makes them profitable. So they're not a going concern after 10, 20 years of doing business that has profitability. Our model immediately has profitability. And so that will automatically mean that we can also offer better pricing. And now that the subsidies are gone, which we are very happy about, now that the subsidies are basically gone, that means they actually have to compete against us in price. And we know they can't beat us in price. So if people are going to have plug-in charging, they're doing so at the discretion of knowing that they're paying a lot more to have plug-in charging for whatever reason that might be, which doesn't really make any sense.
Got it. So let's go back to your energy efficiency or transfer efficiency, right? 93% is what you said. Is my understanding is 94. That's super high. I feel. What is the actual data? Like in all these tests that you've done, what has been the actual efficiency for real?
I mean, that's what it is. I don't know what you're asking me here. I think you're almost like saying, you're insinuating that that we didn't give you the right details.
There are things that are, there is a spec, and then there's how, so as an example, gas efficiency, right? So there are cars that are built for a high efficiency for gasoline, but when you actually do it, it's slightly lower because of environmental costs, because of whatever. The expense, it's not because of the system itself, it's because the car accelerated, slowed down, the way you're driving, the quality of the roads, a lot of it depends on that. And so I was just wondering, where does it actually come to, and how does it compare with wired power? Only because that is an important consideration for consumers like myself. So I'm just thinking, okay, if I didn't have to buy that Tesla charger, I just bought forget about the Tesla, but if I didn't have to buy that on-the-wall charger, and if I just put something on the floor, would it be the same cost, not just as a capex, but also as an operating expense? That's what I'm trying to compare.
Yeah, so the first part of that answer is that our wireless charging efficiencies have been fully vetted and verified by major automakers and by third-party laboratory testing as well. So we only promote what we have actually achieved. We don't promote anything that is outside of things that we haven't yet gone through a third party to validate or approve. Second part of that answer is that the efficiency has a peak efficiency of 93%. As stated here, it could swing down into the low 90s even if you're fully misaligned, and that misalignment has got to be quite high to do so. But if we're talking about the comparative analysis versus plug-in charging will typically be somewhere around high 80s to mid 90s. So the efficiency range is approximately the same. And I think it's really hard for people to understand, how is it possible that you're able to achieve wireless charging at the same efficiency level? And I understand that point, right? Like we understand that there needs to be some clarification there. because automatically people believe that you're just going to lose a bunch of power between two pads that are separated from each other. And the answer is that's not where the power is being lost at. Actually, all the power that's happening between those two pads is being captured. There's almost like zero loss in that situation. So between the pads isn't where the loss is. The loss is in the things that are the power electronics and the electromagnetics that need to ensure that there's no loss. And so it wasn't always this way. When we first started doing wireless charging, efficiencies were in the 80s. We were at around 90% when we first developed our first technology back in 2013, 2014. But the key considerations that we've been able to make updates to are selecting parts within that are now much more efficient too. And we've got some gains on efficiency on those parts. A lot of that had to do with the development of solar technology and inverters for solar, and also converters and inverters for backup battery storage, like power walls, and even things that are these kind of power systems that are used in data centers. All those had some performance improvements because they all also had the same kind of problem that we did, which is switching losses. And so when you have wireless charging, you're going to have three primary conversions that happen over the entirety of the wireless charging process. One's going to happen at the very front end, which is with the power station. The power station can be either wall mounted or it can be buried underneath the ground. That's connected directly into the grid. You're going to see somewhere around a 3% loss on that. And what it typically is, that loss is going to be something that happens between AC to DC conversion. So it's going from AC to DC typically, because that's what you usually get from the grid. We could take DC and it would actually, if we were able to get DC direct into our system, it could improve our efficiency even up to 95%. But on average, you're going to have AC as a connection. And because of that, that means then you have to convert from AC to DC and then DC to high frequency AC. So between that conversion from AC to DC and then DC to high frequency AC, we lose 3% in the power station and about 2% in the power pad, because the power pad is converting into high frequency AC at around 800 volt or so. It can even go higher than that. Now, wireless charging is always in AC. So between the two pads, you always have to transfer in AC. There's no such thing as DC wireless charging. You have to oscillate. So alternating current then results in the transfer of power to the receiving pad on the vehicle. And then it has to reconvert from high frequency AC now back into DC at the voltage requirement of the vehicle. Each one of those stages will have somewhere between 1% to 3% loss. And there's 3 stages. And that's what it ultimately comes out to. That's what we're always protecting for and controlling for as it goes. So we start with AC at the outlet or at the grid level, and then we convert over to DC once it reaches to the battery. So we're feeding the battery directly the voltage in DC that it requires. Hopefully that helped to provide a deeper
Thank
explanation.
you. And just so our audience has a comparison point, in wired charging, similar losses occur, and those occur due to, well, there's the conversion loss, which has to be similar, and then the other loss happens in the actual cable. Where you have these resistance losses. So just so I want to make sure it's clear to everyone that there are losses in both systems. They're happening due to different reasons. And the reason why you're able to match up to the wired charging is because your losses are of a different kind. But kind of
that's right. That's exactly right.
This was a long discussion. If there's any last questions, this is a last call. You have been complimented for your perseverance, Jeremy. Many congratulations. I would say the same.
Thank you.
But if there's any other questions, please let us know. Otherwise, this webinar recording will be available starting tomorrow, and you should be able to view it on the Hevo website or Hevo page on PropelX. The other thing is, if you're ready to commit, please make your commitments. We will be wrapping up the campaign on PropelX sooner than November 1st. So you will know the dates, but the sooner we get the momentum, the better it is for Hevo. So if you really want to support the company as we do, please do make your commitments as soon as you can. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to have you, Jeremy, and your team as well. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.